I'm going to mute your mics real quick, make it through this easier. All right, guys. So again, welcome to week 3. And as you guys can see, you have your quiz due. It's going to be due Wednesday, quiz 3. And the first real assignment that you have is this fader, panning, and EQ. In other words, mix 1, we call this. This is where we actually get to start using the skills that we learned from the immersive part 1 and 2. With the immersive part 1, we learned about EQ. So we're actually going to give you guys a song to basically mix. And this isn't a mix class. We're not going to grade you on your mix. What we're going to be grading you on is your use of the tools, your proper use of EQs and proper routing, as you guys will get into time-based effects and everything else. So that's what the mix project is all about. We've shown you how to use these tools. Now let's go ahead and start playing around with these tools. Let's actually use it on a project. This will give you guys some experience, and then you have us, again, to be able to give you feedback to help you. All right, so the assignment starts with, as you guys can see, we give you a couple things to go watch in lynda.com. Audio recording techniques with Bobby Owensky. We give you a few segments to watch. As you can see, it's not very long. It's 12 minutes long total. And we give you a few instructions here as far as what you're going to be needing to do. For the screenshot, for instance, we tell you to go ahead and take a screenshot of the mixer window. This way, I could see from one single shot. It helps me a lot as far as your routing and everything else, or how things are set up. And then I also will need the session so that way I could open up the cues and so forth and see if there's anything that I need to give you feedback on. All right, you're going to start off with downloading your session. It's right here. You'll be downloading this. It's 68 megabytes, so it can take a little bit. But honestly, if you have any kind of decent connection, 68 megabytes should be within a minute. You'll get it downloaded. Second thing, you're going to be opening that session and then save it, do a save as, and rename it. So let's go ahead and I'm going to show you basically, I'm going to walk you through everything. I'd come over here to File, do Save As. All right, it is my last name, Rivers _ first name _ RPR, and then we've just been going mix 1. Save it, yeah, to the desktop. So now I did it a save as. That way, this is now labeled with my name and so forth. This is my project, I'm working on it. It has popped up right here. Okay, so there's my new version. If I really mess up, I could always go right back and start again. When you download this, minus this noise gate, it'll basically look like this. You're going to have all the faders down. Now, these faders control the level of each track. So this is something we're going to want to start bringing up and listening to the song. Most mixes usually start, and I'll give you a little mix information, even though this is in a mix class. You'll start off with the drums. Most engineers usually kind of start off with the drums, or they bring everything up slightly and just listen to the whole song to get the idea of what the song's going to sound like. Now with the drums, what I usually head for is the overheads, this OH, left and right. Now why do I do that? It's because I'm going to show you guys as far as how a drum kit is kind of set up. I've got this photo here. Now here's a standard drum kit basically. You have your drummer, he sits here. You've got the kick drum. That's the bass drum also, we call it sometimes. You'll have the snare. You'll have toms, usually going from the left to right, from the highest frequency to the lowest frequency. You'll have your cymbals and your hi-hats. So those are all the parts, and as you guys can look at our track, that's basically what's on here. We have 3 toms, hi-hat, Then, your kick, your snare, so all your instruments. But the overheads are basically really there to catch all the cymbals. That's usually what the overhead mics do. But because of their location, we would normally have a overhead left, so a microphone sitting right here, and an overhead right, another microphone sitting here. With a normal drum kit, that'll capture a stereo image between those two microphones of the whole drum kit. So we use that to our advantage. I'm going to grab these. Maybe not bring them up all the way. I bring them up basically equal. So 9, 9.8, 9.6. Oops, there we go. I guess I could also type it in. If you just click, you can type it in. Now, just like it says left, this is your panning. Click and drag down, click and drag up. Now I just moved the position of that left mic over to completely left on my stereo image, and my right microphone goes completely right. When I hit play, and if you just sit down and listen to that, you will actually hear stuff is panned throughout. And that's because of the fact that we have two microphones recording on each side of the drummer. So we're capturing a stereo image. And that's what we're going to shoot for. We're going to try to create a stereo mix. We don't want everything in the center. That would be kind of boring. We left mono recordings way back in the 60s. Dropped that and everything became stereo. We have a left and a right now. So definitely don't want to record or mix down everything in a mono. So we're going to learn a little bit about positioning. Now, something else that between the faders and these pans, we actually could move, and you'll read about this, you could move instruments within the mix. Your fader can move things closer or farther away. Think about in real life. If someone's speaking to you closely, you could hear them a lot louder than if they're 30 feet away from you speaking at the same level. So the loudness level kind of gives you the illusion, of course, of farther and closer. And then your panning could move things from left to right. So with those two controls, you literally can move things within your stereo spectrum forward, backwards, and left and right. And then later when we start adding reverb and other effects like that, you really could, give the illusion of stuff being farther away, closer, and then left and right. So these are things that are very simple, but at the same time, they could really make an impact in a song. The song itself, if everything's in mono, it just kind of sits there. But yet, if I start using my stereo imaging, and this is just with two speakers, with your headphones, you can listen to this, and you still get that imaging, or just two speakers. We're not talking about surround sound that does 5.1. This is just with two speakers. We have a lot of control of this. We don't have surround sound set up, so we're not even going to bother with surround sound. You can do surround sound, but you'd have to have an interface that's capable as well as 5.1 speaker setup. So listen to your headphones. Just kind of put, I use the headphones as a good example because you can really hear what's happening and it doesn't interfere with the acoustics in your room. But listen, and you listen to these two tracks, hit play for a little bit, and you start imagining the positioning. And you're probably going to get something like this as far as the imagery that you get. Because most engineers will be mixing from, and this is because of the drummers mainly, we mix from what they call drummer's perspective. So we're going to be using our panning and our faders to kind of set up the levels, positions of all these instruments in a 3D image. So imagine yourself sitting at this drum kit and you're the one playing. This is how loud these things would be and position-wise. The kick drum will be dead center, and even though the snare is over to the side, quite often we just put it dead center also because those are the two driving forces behind any drum kit, or any song, I should say. When you hear the drumming, you always hear the snare, you always hear the bass drum, those are the ones kind of creating the rhythm. It starts everything. So we want them, because they're so important, we put them both in the center. So I'll leave right here my kick, my snare, pretty centered. Toms, well, notice, like I was saying, we go from high to low. The toms, tom 1, that's the small tom. Tom 2 is this medium tom. Tom 3 is actually this floor tom. So I'm probably going to want to pan that almost to look like what's happening there. And if you listen to this track, you'll get that same image. So right there, as you can see, when the first tom hits, it's going to be more to my left. My second tom hits, it's going to be more towards my right. And then the third tom's probably even more to the right. You'll hear this quite often whenever a tom roll happens. This happens where you'll hear the panning of those toms going across your stereo spectrum. The hi-hat, quite often you'll see people don't turn it as much because it's still pretty important. It gives you, a little syncopated rhythm with the kick and the snare. So quite often you'll see just a little bit of panning on that. So right there, I've got a general panning of what the drums should be like. I can bring this down, hit play. I'll start from the beginning even, and start bringing up the levels. Now, kick, like I said, center. You can see on our output, it's going both to the left and the right. Snare. Oh, one other thing. In the instructions, we tell you to go around -12 dB. That's a decent level that if you start off there, when you go across the rest of the instruments, you should end up at a decent level for the output level. So I make a nice blend between the kick, snare, toms. There's a lot of bleed on there. And in fact, I could even hear ringing, which we'll be using our EQ to get rid of that ringing sound. You can hear it especially there. It's like this, after the hit happens, you hear ring. You'll be able to actually EQ that out. I'm going to go ahead and continue through the general mix. There's some hi-hat, so I'm getting a decent feel, and then add the overheads. That's sounding pretty good. Now, usually most engineers, after they do a rough this is all called rough mixing too, because we're going to keep going back to these levels and changing them as we add EQ, we add compression, because it's going to change your output level. Let's add bass. Hit play. There we go. Now, bass is another one of those instruments that generally right dead center. Keys. But now I'm starting to have a little bit too many things happening in the center. So this is where I'm going to start using my panning again, and let's go ahead and grab those keys and move them over. So now they're slightly over to the side. Guitar, well, I'm going to pan it to the other side. And you keep messing around with the levels to kind of get them decent. Now, let's go back to, actually we have all the instruments basically set up already. So I've rough mixed the instruments already. I'm getting an idea what the song sounds like. Let's start bringing in the vocals. Lead vocal, well, just like anytime, I'll close this, we don't need this. going to open up this is called a stage plan. Whatever you have, a band, you're going to have stuff throughout the stage. Usually, if you are a live sound engineer, if you're mixing this live, I would try to, basically, of course, lead. He's going to be dead center because he is the lead. But all the other instruments, we kind of sit there and we start panning stuff slightly over. Bass, because of its low frequency, we actually usually end up putting it in the center also. But keyboards, we slightly over to the side, guitars slightly to one side or the other. You balance out the stuff. But if you are doing a live gig, you wouldn't want to, for instance, pan the guitarist completely over to the left when he's standing on the right side of the stage. It will just sound funny. People won't quite get it, possibly, but it just won't feel comfortable because they're staring at what should be the right side and they're hearing it coming from the left side. So if you're actually mixing for a live situation, you'd follow what the stage plan kind of looks like. This gives you a better idea. But when I'm doing it for the studio, you have free reign. I can make the keyboardist player completely on the other side and the guitarist on this side of the stage. No one has any picture to follow along with to make it, look funny or sound funny to us. Let's start bringing in those vocals. Lead vocalist is always going to be the lead, so he's going to be louder and he's going to be dead center and up front. Now you'll notice our next thing is vocal harmonies. We have two of them. And then lastly, we have an ad-lib vocal track. So he's going to be adding to that lead vocalist stuff. The harmonies, you'll almost always see the harmony guys behind, or if it's girls singing harmonies, whatever it might be, we would actually have them behind the lead. We don't want to make them the stars. The lead vocalist is the star. So they're just kind of filling in or adding backup vocals for that lead. Hence why I have them at a lower level. And I would also, probably later, you'll see, we add more reverb to them just so that they sound like they're farther away.
There's no place I'd rather be than the midst of His majesty. Feel the power in my soul.
Now, if they're sitting right behind him, they don't really stand out. So a simple trick is to pan the vocals, pan those harmony vocals out. You give them a wider stereo spectrum, especially when we start adding, some effects to that. And that ad-lib guy, well, I'm not going to make him, compete with the lead vocalist. I'm going to pan him slightly, just ever so slightly, so he stands out a little differently than that lead, and he's not going to ever be as loud as the lead.
There's no place I'd rather be than the midst of His majesty. Feel the power in my soul. This power worth much more than gold. I and praise His people. Yes, I do.
So you can see right there, just that spot, we could hear the harmonies happening, we still hear the lead vocalist being the loudest, and even the ad-lib guy, he's giving him backup, but he's not overtaking the lead. So this is generally what most engineers will do. They kind of work off of this type of thing. I've just created a rough mix of the whole thing. Now, I'd move on to the next step, and that's EQing. So this assignment that you guys are doing, what we're going to be doing completely, as you follow the instructions, all you're having to do for this assignment is, let's go ahead and work our faders, do a rough mix, work our pans to set it up so we get a little bit of separation. And then lastly, we're going to come in and we start turning on EQs, and we're going to EQ these tracks so that they work better with each other. I could use solos to solo track and really listen. And if I don't like something, I EQ it out, and then I bring it back into the mix so I hear how it sounds within the mix. Because sometimes just soloing it, making it sound wonderful by itself, when you add it to the mix, it may not work. So a good idea to do is, yes, you could solo stuff, listen to it more closely, but then also listen to it within the context of the whole mix. That way you're not really destroying something within that mix. But your EQ is a very powerful tool. You use it to take advantage of stuff. One other thing, if you remember from EQing, you could use filters. I can filter out, for instance, the kick drum. I'll hit solo on this, play the kick drum. You can see, there's our kick. Again, that microphone picked up a lot of stuff that I don't really want. I could either A, gate it out, or combo, gating it out and filtering it out. I'm going to filter out. You see, I can really darken that kick drum, make it almost more dancey by taking off the high-end frequencies. Why have all this extra information on that track that I don't really need? So I'm going to EQ that out. I can sit here and with a parametric EQ, I will bring it up and listen, go across, find what I don't like. Let me wait for a kick. Like there's some ringing in there that I don't really like. So I'm going to fine tune it. Like right there, I don't like that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that down. And it doesn't have to be a whole lot. It might be just a little bit to bring it out. You guys probably remember with that noisy vocal how to remove things that you don't like. So this is called subtractive EQing, and quite often it's actually better to remove the bad stuff than it is to try to boost all that good stuff that you like out of there. It's usually a lot less things that you have to EQ out versus you wanting to boost with your EQ things that you like, because there might be a lot of frequencies that you really like. So like right there, I've got it, the kick drum. I'd go in and work my snare. Oh.
Every day.
See, I like that. The kick drum actually works. With the snare, again, I have stuff in here that I don't really need. Now, not as much as the kick. Now, if I want to also make the snare kind of really jump out a little bit, maybe grab a shelf and let's EQ some of that bottom end so that way it's mainly in those mid frequencies. And I gotta wait for the those hi-hats, I'm sorry, the side stick to stop playing. There it goes. Now we actually hit the snare. And you guys can find frequencies that you do or don't like. And I know I'm kind of going through this quickly, and it's mainly because of the fact that, hey, I don't have all day to sit here with you guys to show you this. Plus, I want you guys to be able to go in here and EQ things the way you feel it sounds good. Like right there, I've got the kick and snare. Let's see how they work. I'm going to do kick and snare. Let me get to the point where it really starts giving me the snares. So I've got a nice kick sound with a decent snare sound so far. I can fine tune that even more when we get into compression and gating. But for now, it's sounding pretty good. I like how the EQ is working. Check it out with the whole mix. Notice just from those simple little things, I might bring down my snare. It's cutting through a little bit more than I want to now. So you're constantly fine-tuning the levels, especially when you start using EQ, because then you start EQing things where it cuts through the mix a little better. You start EQing out things that were there before that you may have, possibly had it lowered because you didn't like the sound of something. Well, if you take it out, then maybe you need to bring it up a little bit as far as that sound. So EQing is an important part of your mix. Mix 1 as you do just that, you're going to be, again, messing with the faders, messing with the pans, and your EQs. That's all we want on this mix one. The noise gate is only here because of the fact that we were showing the noise gate earlier as I explained some stuff. But for this mix, you guys will only have to turn in EQing of all the tracks and levels, as well as also the pans. Now, let me look and show you guys the other thing I was talking about. Let's say, let me see how the levels are as far as the output. Okay, they're actually kind of low. You guys can see that. If I need to bring up everything, but let's say I like the blend that I've already created, I don't want to sit here and have to bring up each one by a certain amount. There's a much quicker way. I can go and select my first track, hold down Shift, select my last track. Now all the tracks are selected, and you guys can see them, they've changed to a light gray. And I can bring up just one single fader, and notice that all the faders will come up by that same amount. So I was at minus 20, now I brought it up to here, minus 16. So I brought it up 4 dB. Notice I'm still not right there. I can actually give this a little bit more, about 1 more dB. See, we go a little bit more. There we go. As you guys can see, I'm capable of now making sure that my whole mix is around that minus 6. So overall, yes, you do want to stay at that minus 6 level as far as your output. Don't worry, later, whenever you do any mix, your mastering will bring this up to be just as loud as any song that you might hear on the radio and everything else. But you want to give yourself that dynamic range for mastering and cleaning stuff up as you go. But overall, just keep it going around that minus 6 level. Right here, as far as output, you saw is basically going there. If it goes a little higher, no big deal. You just want to, generally, your average will be about that minus 6. Excuse me. That'll give your mastering engineer, or you, if you're going to do the mastering later on this track, the headroom that you'll need for using the limiting, the compression on the total mix and everything else. In other words, the mastering. But that's this mix one assignment. That's all we have to do. Again, like all the other assignments, come and look at your grading checklist to see that we've got everything done. Now, fader mix of session, well, yes. As you guys can see, I did a full fader mix of the whole session. Appropriate stereo imaging, set with panning. Yes, it actually sounds correct. It sounds normal. It sounds like all the stuff that's happening out there on the radio. So we've got a nice stereo image happening. Yours could be tweaked a little bit different or whatever, no big deal. But we want to see that you're using your pans intelligently. I don't want to see one thing panned one way, the other thing panned the other way. That makes no sense when you hit play. Just like, why am I hearing the snare completely on one side and the kick completely on the other side? You don't hear songs like that. You want to, basically set everything up to the norm. And yes, there could be creative tolerances, you might say, where, well, I want my song to be completely over to one side or something. But for this class, please just kind of go with the norm, what most songs are out there, like for your panning. The next on the list is at least 10 instances of EQ. So I would actually go and EQ all these tracks, but we make it so that, hey, if you have at least 10 of them engaged and you're actually EQing, I don't want to see stuff just turned on, with nothing done on it, because why bother even turning on the EQ? It's not doing anything. But if I see that stuff is EQ'd, I'll check, see how it works out with the track. I'll give you advice on what you did with EQing. But it shows you with our feedback from myself or any of the other instructors, it'll help you, reaffirm what you've learned from the immersive part 1, the EQing. So you'll have to have at least 10 of these things engaged. Next thing is the mix window screenshot. Well, that's a real simple one. Here's the mix window, or even quicker, I can come over here to Window, Open Mixer, and it opened up it on my other screen, but here you go. Here's the mixer window by itself. You'll notice it shows everything, giving us the capability of, I could see that things are engaged, I could see that EQ stuff is happening. I could even, just from these pictures, I've done this long enough where I could look at it and go, okay, I understand what he's doing, and yeah, that makes sense. Or, let me go check that out, and I go into the EQ, physically check it out, and try to give you guys advice as to what might help you with your EQing. The mix window is what we're asking for, so just take a screenshot of that. That's that one. Submitted complete logic session. Come on, there we go. Logic session file named, of course, your last name, your first name, RPR mix 1, like I was showing you earlier. One other thing, good habit to get into is, let's say I've already started mixing this, I'm working on this, keep hitting save. What that'll do is make sure that if for whatever reason something happens, your battery dies on your laptop, or you lose power, a glitch somewhere, or whatever could happen, your program freezes, at least you'll have a backup of where you last saved. You don't lose hours possibly of work. You want to continuously save. Very good habit to do. There is also, Logic has the capability of having an auto save, so it kind of automatically saves for you. But I say, even if you have that engaged, which I do, I still save every once in a while, just to make sure that I've captured what my work has been, progressing. I see a question as far as how do we turn this in? The session upload, we don't need audio. So remember, this song is something I just sent to you. So we're looking at it as like, okay, I sent you the tracks, I want you to mix it, and then send me back some mixes so I can hear what you've done. This will be a tactic sometimes used by record companies, and sometimes just when you're working with different producers, where you're just the engineer on this project. They want to hear some of your mixes. They already have the audio tracks, so they don't require those files. You could send them just the mix file, which is a lot smaller, and you can send it via standard email. So just to show you another way of working on this one, we're just going to have you do it without audio. Makes it quicker upload for you as well. Even though we're still saving it without audio, in other words, you're creating it as a folder, then grabbing the mix file out of that folder and sending that, you still need to zip it. The zip files will transport a lot easier through FSO. I have seen where people told me they just uploaded the actual session and no problems, but I've also seen a lot of people that tell me that, hey, something went wrong, it won't let me upload it, it keeps giving me an error. So to make sure you don't get any errors, definitely zip that logic file. So for this one, no audio is recorded, just go ahead and save it as a folder, and in that folder you'll go ahead and grab the Logic project out of that and zip it and upload it. The other thing we want you to do is go ahead and bounce this down. Bounce down at 320 kilobytes per second. We want a high quality bounce down. And we'll do it as an MP3. We don't need it uncompressed, so that way at least it'll be smaller. But we won't lose any quality. So you'll have to turn in this MP3. And lastly, we want to make sure no clipping on any of the channels. Now, I just showed you how to bring the whole thing up if we needed to, but if it was the opposite, where all these tracks were too loud and we're clipping, all we need to do again is select them all. And I'll go over that again. Just hello, There we go. Hold down Shift. So now I've got all the tracks selected except for the output. I leave them both, the master and the output, at 0. Let's say it's way up here. Ooh, sorry about that. As you can see, it clipped.
And
So
praises
I would
be.
just grab one single fader and bring it down to the point where you can see that your levels are around that -6. If I hit play again, you'll see it's much lower. But I'm still kind of high. Let's bring it
And
down a little
praises
bit more.
people. And praises people.
That's pretty good. I mean, it's bouncing a little bit above. You saw that -4 is my peak level. I want to bring it down a little bit, and then my new peak level should be around -6. Yeah, it's actually
And
still
praises
high.
people.
Well, nevertheless, that's how you do that. You'd select. Now, remember to deselect. Otherwise, anything that you do from that point on, all the tracks will be affected. So definitely deselect. Otherwise, I could grant one single pan knob, and then they'd all pan. So we don't want to have everything selected unless we physically want to affect all of them. Like I was just doing there, I wanted to affect all the faders. That's the mix 1. All right, let me go ahead and open up the microphones and see if there's any major questions for this one.